Hello, and welcome to the Write Club podcast, where we take you behind the pages and into the fascinating world of writing. I'm Beth, and this is Mary, and we're part of the team at Writing Magazine and Writers Online. Hi, Mary. How are you?
Hi Beth, I'm really well, thank you. Let me introduce our guest today. Debbie Wastling is a writer of British historical novels. Debbie originally hails from Yorkshire, though she currently lives in Los Angeles, where we met briefly at the recent AWP conference and book fair. Debbie started writing in high school when she wrote her first produced play, going on to professionally direct over 75 musicals and plays and write new music. Lately, grant writing has been her forte for arts education. She's currently in England on a tour of libraries as East Riding's Author of the Month. Hello, Debbie. Where do we find you today?
Good morning. I'm in cloudy Middlesbrough, but they say it's going to be sunny.
Tell us a little bit about this library tour that you're on at the minute.
I'm excited. It hasn't started, but they reached out to me. They're trying a new initiative in the libraries to get people in, probably mostly after hours or during the day. I'm doing a variety of evening presentations. I'm going to be presenting The Sutherland Scandals, my latest book, but I'll be talking about the past series as well. I have very lucky that I have a lot of vintage photographs from 1900, which is when my great-grandmother was alive. And she lived in a pub in Newcastle. And really, that's what the book is about, and the decline of the pub to an illegitimate son that nobody knew about until he showed up at the funeral. And I'm not making this up. This is all, history of what happened. And the libraries hooked onto that and said, well, would you come and do presentations with? And then I said, well, I want to bring the photographs as well, because I think then it brings the stories alive. I love photos because through every one of my books, the minute I get a new photograph from someone in the family, because they happen to have had it in a drawer for 100 years, I write about it. And I've noticed as well that I write from images of the time. They sort of seem to trigger my mind. I mean, I've always been into the art world, so maybe it's something I've subliminally ignored, but good writing can come from anywhere. But the ideas, I was just reading your last person that you did on podcast, that he sort of dreams things. Well, I'm similar. But I wake up with sort of the writing is in my head while I'm asleep, and I'm writing it, and then I get up and have to write it down. So there's some imagery going on when you're not even aware of it, I'm sure. And that's why I started the family series, because there's nobody else who seems to write in the family, and they haven't spoken to each other for 40 years. So we've also changed that. So that's another intriguing scandal about why they don't all speak to each other. Grateful to the East Riding libraries. If it will probably be over by the time this podcast goes out, but there's some fabulous libraries. Beverley, many people know, is a well-built new and old library. Then Pocklington, which I used to swim at every Sunday, so I'm very happy to go back to Pocklington. They have a lovely Burnby Gardens. I'm also going to be a mobile author of the month. They're going to take me around in the Skirler bus. I don't know whether I'm going on Road Dahl, which is what they call the bus after Roald Dahl, or whether I'm going on the Shakespeare bus. But they'll be there, and then we'll settle in Skirler and people can come in. I won't be doing a presentation then because it could be raining or whatever, but I'll be meeting all the people who order their books and pick them up in the rural areas. My dad was a farmer and my cousins live in that rural area, so I'm very keen on bringing the arts to people in areas that don't get a chance to. So I said straight away, she said, it might be cold, it might be raining, and I said, that's fine. Used to the wetlands of East Riding, well used to it.
I was going to say, well, welcome to England.
Yeah, I mean, it's a plus living in California, but we've had your weather for a few months. Summer's not even broken yet, which is very unusual.
Yeah, I
But
remember Mary saying when she went over to the AWP, we had really nice weather here, and she came back and I was like, how was it? She was like, yeah, we didn't see the sun the whole time we were there. Oh,
right, it's grey and no sun. Yes. And it was delightful to go there. Again, with libraries, I very much think writer education is important to me. And AWP does exactly that. I mean, it's an advocacy group, but that's where we met Mary, and it was the Writers Online. I so delighted. And I do have to say, and I'll say before I say it, you haven't told me to say this, but the first magazine I got was absolutely, I rarely read things from cover to cover, except novels. But, it was a great magazine with so much helpful, sensible advice written by those people who wrote that. I'm trying to think of all the articles. I haven't got it with me. I couldn't carry things like that. But it's the sort of thing I will go back to and encourage my students who write to read up, because it's an education. You can have a master's degree in writing, but it doesn't mean to say you can write selling novels. It's
Yeah.
all about the creative, imaginative side.
Yeah, amazing. Oh, thank you. That's really nice to hear, actually. And how long have we got you in the UK for?
Well, we're here until the 28th. I finish on a book tour again, my other belief is independent bookshops. I'm not against Waterstones or any one of the big, because that's how you make money out of books. But the independent people who are opening their doors to me are fabulous. I'm going to Brigg, which is south of the River Humber, for those people who are living elsewhere in the world. And it's got some of the worst, education is the same as anywhere in England, but they don't tend to read there. They don't have as many libraries, and it's rural England again. You're back to far-flung farms. So this independent bookshop does a big, I've been involved in it last year. They do a big September, usually at Normanby Hall, a September event where they bring all creative writers together. And I encourage you, because I know definitely Mary's in the north, to go to this day. Is it one day, a Saturday, and they have live music, live performances, but they also have authors in all of the Normanby Hall buildings. So whether you're fantasy, they have a children's section, and I think they bring in over 50 writers, and they do that all out of the love of their heart. It's not funded. I'm as I've told you, I'm a grant writer. I'm trying to help them find funding, because to me, in a rural area where there aren't tons of libraries, and educationally their writing stats for the kids who leave school are not as high as elsewhere. They should be given as much help as they can. But it's called it's a Normanby Hall, and as I say, I think they've moved the date maybe to early October. But it's always in that September. And on top of that, they get free buses. There's a company that's come in from Sweden, and they're a packing industry company, and they're funding all the buses to drive. So you can get on a bus in, say, Grimsby at the coast or Scunthorpe, and they will bus you to this event. So even if you don't have cars or don't drive, you can get to it. That's making writing available to everybody, right? Again, it'd be worth getting Nick at the Rabbit Hole Bookshop, and just before doing a podcast. I'm giving you more work to do, I'm sorry. But the reason he got Independent Bookshop of the Year is because of what they do for the whole area. That's what I'm hoping to do with the libraries. If we can have an author every month, if I'm good at it and they like it and people show up, hopefully an author can go every month of the year. That's 12 authors going around East Riding, promoting their books, but really bringing writing to the masses. And I think that's probably why I've always been in the non-profit world of writing.
Oh, fab. Well, I mean, we definitely need to make sure that we go to that event in October. Absolutely. It sounds incredible. And I think you've answered this a little bit, but specifically, like, why are libraries so important to you specifically?
Well, Beverley Library was my first library when I lived in Beverley. Every Saturday, 10 books. That was the max, and I wanted 20, of course, because I'm a voracious reader. But then when I moved to Hull, obviously the reading there, but they're important because I wouldn't have got the art education that I got. Beverley Library still does have an art museum, And so, it wasn't just taking out books and reading. It was really going up when it was wet, my dad and I, who would take me upstairs. I've just written in my newsletter this month, again, I didn't know this picture of cows, and I remember I told you he's a farmer, is one of the most famous paintings because it's huge. Cows moving along a prairie or whatever. And I did a load of research and put it in my newsletter this month because I was fascinated. I saw it every week, and it's the biggest canvas in the world, they think, of cows, which, may not be interesting you if you're not a farmer. But, the fact that I had access to such fine art, it was 1860, 70, they think it was painted. And it's been in Beverley Library. Somebody obviously donated it. Been in there ever since. So besides the writing, and then when I went into musical theatre, I loved Hull Library, again, for the same reason. They have every score of every musical. You can go back to the musicals of Gilbert and Sullivan, and you can actually get the full scores. So I was able to borrow the full scores to see if we were crazy in directing that musical. I used to direct at Hull Truck. So it all happens.
Can you tell us a little bit about the series of historical novels?
No, I was going to be a writer. I've always been a writer of plays, music. And then I met a cousin after 40 years. And again, you've got to come to the presentation to find out why. But I'll share a little with you. The family didn't talk. My mother did not speak to her sisters. So he called me up and said, "Is this Debbie Wastling?" I said, "Yes, it is." He said, "I think we're cousins." I said, "Yes." Well, he knew we were because we used to go out to Kilnsea, which is the far ends of the earth near Sunk Island, the ends of East Riding, on a caravan holiday when we were kids. Then when the family split up, never saw them again. But he got in touch with me. He said, "Well, the Flying Scotsman is about to have its 100th birthday, and you should know Grandad drove it." "Oh, he did?" was my answer. So I started, he'd done all the research. It was fabulous. I had a research assistant for my very first novel, and he, sent it to me. I started thinking, well, we need to do this. My grandfather worked for the LNER for 46 years from 1924. And I started to research. And then my cousin Neil said, "Well, you know why you do what you do, which is the singing and the musical theatre." I said, "No, because I'm good at it, I guess." And he said, "No, it's because Grandma sang for the king." I said, "What?" So my grandmother, who was married to the train driver, was an opera singer, and she sang for the King of England, George V, in 1924 at the opening of Wembley. You would have thought that somebody in our family might have actually told me that, but they did. So I felt I had to write a book about it. And then, of course, the book got longer and longer and longer. So it's ended up as 3 books because I went backwards in history, researching the history. And I'd say to any writers who write about authentic places or people, you've got to do the research. So it was months and months of research. I'm on first name terms with births, deaths, and marriages, because of course I had to get all the dates right. And then you have to research all the classical footage and how much you're going to put in of Victorian, Edwardian. These are all the times I write about. And of course, the 1920s, all the history has got to be layered in there somehow. And then you have to decide, well, I can't have that. So now I've got to rewrite the novel. So yeah, that's how I started. It sounds simple, but it wasn't. And I've just written non-stop for the last 4 years. And aren't I lucky? It's a family story. It's with some creative input because you can't put everything in.
And will there be another book, or do you think you've completed this section?
Well, yeah, I've got 5 ready now. So a serious editor would have told me to start at the oldest, but I started in the 20s. I then went backwards to write. I went forwards into the 40s. So I do a lot about the Hull Blitz, and it was one of the most bombed cities. And so I went in. The second book is called The Soundtrack of Their Lives, which is really about the children growing up, the children of the Flying Scotsman driver. And then I went backwards because I found out my great grandmother, which is the book I'm promoting at the moment. She was actually in operatic societies in Hull, East Hull Operatic. Hull was a maybe it was true everywhere. I know I've worked in Sheffield, and I know Sheffield has a lot of operatic societies, but in Hull they had one in every part of the town, and she was a part of that, which is probably why her daughter was sent to the top teacher in Hull, Madame Shara, and Madame Shara taught her opera. And funnily enough, when I was teaching in Hull, one of our groups once won the Madame Shara Cup. It was this huge silver cup, and they had to make sure it was on your insurance in case it went missing while you had it for the year from the festival. It was bizarre. And when I found out, oh my goodness, Madame Shara really was a real person, which I presume she was, but she was the top opera singer and trained people for the opera down south, the Wells and Tunbridge Wells, wherever opera was going on. So it all came back to me. All the things I knew, I didn't really knew what the background of history was. So that's that one. I've just gone into, and that's the one I'm doing. I've got the Irish Secrets and Lies, which is great grandparents and how they came from Ireland and Scotland. And then I've written my mother and her sister's story, which is, possibly the most argumentative novel that anybody will read. I mean, I know, people, there's a lot of family sagas written about dysfunctional families, and often they're made into movies, but thinking about Osage County, but there are many stories hidden in families that nobody talks about. And in mine, they didn't talk about anything. My mother just told me, oh, we don't talk to that side of the family. And that was that. So I found all this out, and it's just amazing. And then photographs started coming through to me, which is when you can actually describe the people correctly, and what they dressed and what they wore. But I'm so excited. I will keep coming back to the libraries anywhere in any part of England to tell the stories, because it's not like they are working class stories, and often those don't often get told or made into film for TV or anything. It's, the Downton Abbeys are wonderful to make, but I think the people who make any city are the working class people who go day after day and work. So
agree more. It's a fascinating pool of information that you can work with there, isn't it?
Oh, I mean, the one good thing about the internet is you can even get everybody's death certificates, birth and marriage certificates, and then it starts you off. Oh, well, where did they get married? Oh, where were they buried? And so on. And I do a lot about places I've lived or know very well, like Hornsea. I didn't know where my grandparents went on a day, but because I knew everybody in the family loved Hornsea on the East Coast, I just basically based their first date there. And of course, I spent summers there, so I could absolutely remember the mere and the water and all the beautiful things about Hornsea. So that's what I write about. Well, I love descriptive writing, so I do a lot of description. If you've never been to the East Riding of Yorkshire, read my book, and then you will know where the good places are to visit. Because I'm almost like a travel, when you get those travel sites that talk about all the beautiful things. Well, actually, it is beautiful, so why not write about it, right?
Yeah, 100%. It's so amazing as well that you get to kind of have that in your family now as well, like the whole story of all the different generations. It's such an amazing thing, like for your family to have.
Oh, absolutely. And I know my second cousin that I got, who we actually tried to get in touch with for a long time, but he was busy working. He has children and grandkids that I've never met. We're hoping to put that right next weekend during the May bank holiday. There'll be another generation who'll have those stories, even if they don't like my writing. It's fine. They'll know that these people existed. And I put I'm in the middle of putting a big display of, I'm going to try and put them all on a collage, the pictures, so that everybody can have a printed copy. There's quite a few pictures. And luckily luckily for me, Stephen Wilson's mom was the last to pass, and she'd kept all the family photographs. So he was the last brick in the wall where I went, oh, he's got all the photographs. He said, yeah, I don't know who these people are, but if you want them, I'll send you them. So he was sending 1900 photographs to me every day in LA. Again, the beauty of being able to write on the internet, and have all the pictures.
Yeah, it does have its perks, doesn't it? And we also, you mentioned that you work in grant writing as well. Could you just explain what that involves a little bit for us?
Yeah, I mean, I've been writing grants for 4 years. I ran a non-profit for music to make sure schools that didn't have music, you put music into the schools. And that meant writing grants to get the instruments. If you wanted an orchestra or a band, that's what you had to do. And so I would call myself fairly experienced. And I now do it for I don't do it for anyone, but anything like the Norman B. Hall, No Limits, the festival is called. And No Limits, I'm trying to write a festival because they're bringing people together with no charge for the festival, free parking, free buses. And I believe in that kind of art production. As I said, they have everything from my love of musical theatre on the stage to bands when I was in bands. And then they have all the writers. What could be better? I'm surprised there isn't sort of that kind of event everywhere in the country. But from small acorns, big oak trees grow. And I hope that people will fund it. And I write, it's an art, just like writing a novel or a short story, and you have to keep working at it. But every grant, what's the pity? It's true in both countries as well, both America and UK. Every darn grant has a different questions, different spreadsheets you have to do, how to prove why you are there for that grant. So it's like writing a new novel every time. I realized from grant writing, I learned to sort of do the research for answering their questions and then write it so you're the most startling. When the committee reads your grant, they will fund it. You don't always get funded either. So I think a lot of people give up on grant writing because you think, oh, well, they're giving £5,000 and then you only get, maybe 1,000. And it's just as much work whether you get 1,000 or 5,000 or 50,000. So grant writing is really interesting, but I would encourage writers who've maybe got a technical background to try and help, because in the future, if the libraries don't get funded, I do know how they get funded in America. It's congressional, and the grants have just been taken away for the Library of Congress. So I'm being quite angry about that. That means a lot of libraries will close in America, which is wrong.
That's absolutely awful, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I hope the same doesn't happen here. But I know they struggle because people have gone onto the internet, but they've been pretty good. I mean, you can now get your films, you can now get your series, and you can now get your books online. But I still think being physically there and pulling the book off the shelf is very important for children and for many adults. I'm always surprised how many people will buy the paperback copy of my book rather than go online. Hope it won't change, but time will tell.
Yeah, I mean, me and Mary go into the Leeds Library quite a lot, and just walking around that place, honestly, if that wasn't there, that'd be a massive hole in the center of Leeds because it's such a beautiful building, if anything else.
I collect libraries wherever I go. I've been in libraries all over America where I've, traveled. But yeah, a library is and one like Leeds or Beverly, which are so old, is very, very important to keep the history as well. And what an amazing place to go and read. I mean, if nothing else, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And when do you find time to write? Are you a bit of a planner or a pantser? How do you work it?
I plan and then I throw the plans out and rewrite them again and write again. I do believe it's half and half, probably. I plan because sometimes why waste your time writing for hours and it's rubbish. right? But that happens too. I'm training my kids to say, you are going to have to rewrite. Writing should be called rewriting, correct? Whatever type of writing. But yeah, I write every day, even if it's only an hour. And then usually I go to 4 or 5 hours a day. And I was just telling my very good friend, I'll tell you about her book when we finish. She's also called Deborah, but she lives in Cumbria. And, I told her, she said, I want to be out in the garden, but I have a deadline for the end of the month. There are always deadlines. And I make that clear as well to young people who are writing, that the deadlines are never going to go away. And of course, I've come from a deadline profession, which is put the show on. It starts at 7:30 and you're on. And so you have to prepare. And that's really, I feel when I'm writing my novels, it's like a big musical. And, I have to get everything right so the audience enjoy it. But I also believe you have to let it go at some point and open the show. And then things irritate you, but you smile a lot and say, thank you for coming to the show or buying the novel. My students, because they're middle school, I say write short stories, but they're all so keen to write fantasy novels because that's what they're writing. And then they realize halfway through how many hours you put into writing a novel and rewriting it and so on. So, I'm a great believer that these children who have all this creative imagination should put it down on paper because it will serve them in some form of their career further on. If nothing else, they'll be really good writers for their companies they work for.
What advice do you give the young people that you work with? What would be your top piece of advice?
Oh, that's a hard one. I would say write every day. Some days, if you just don't feel great, but read every day or write every day is what I tell them. And I say that to adults. I'm always amazed when I'm on writers' forums how many people don't read outside their genre. And it's amazing what fantasy writers can teach historical writers or those that do. My Sutherland Scandals is a romance, so I've started reading a lot more romance. I mean, obviously, I'm one of those strange people that's read everything by Dickens and everything by Shakespeare. Because I directed Shakespeare and I taught Shakespeare in LA, I actually did read every one of the darn. They're not all good, by the way. That's the other thing. Last bit of advice. Not everybody writes amazingly. In fact, Dickens has a lot of clonkers, as I call them. He wrote for magazines, as listeners may know. And when I did I did it for TV show, and I wrote about his dreadful life. Well, the dreadful wife. He actually treated his wife dreadfully. I mean, brilliant genius. So I read every one of his novels, and he wasn't always great because he was doing the monthly. He was being paid monthly or weekly for different magazines to put up he was getting paid by the word, so he would make some very long scenes. They're either scenes or he was on his soapbox. But he was a genius, but he wasn't always a great writer. He had to learn that. In fact, if you read this first one, Pickwick Papers, that's got some really bad sentence structure in. But, he's still who he is, right? He kept writing every day. So, that is the best advice I can give to anybody. The more you write, the better you get.
Yeah, that's brilliant advice. What was your route to publication?
I at the moment self-published. I tried very early on with the first novel because I wanted it out during its centennial year, The Flying Scotsman Sings. I wanted that to be out when the train turned 100. But after writing to tons and tons of sillily American agents who didn't even know who the Flying Scotsman was, I've gone to British ones. I've got a couple of people who are optioning, but I think for now, for this series, I'm going to stick with the British publisher, and I'm going to just keep trying. Of course, every time you write a genre, I don't know if your listeners know this, often you'll have so people sometimes, if they write, say, historical and fantasy, they may have two different agents for those set of books, because not everybody knows how to sell fantasy and not everybody knows how to sell history. The agents have their own delights. Of course, if they're in one of the top companies, they'll probably sell anything well, but smaller agents often have, or they just do children's literature, for example.
And we always end by asking for a book recommendation. Have you got one for us?
I've got lots, because I do keep copies of the best books I read, because I now want to read them again. I'm actually reading by Deborah Swift, who I said earlier in the podcast, actually lives in Cumbria, and she's on her 20th book this year, and she has plodded along with several publishers, but her work is incredibly good, partly because I believe she was a costumer for the BBC. She did a lot of, she describes what they wear fabulously. And her Operation Tulip is a historical wartime set in Poland. And it's about the nastiness of the Nazis and the way they had much more than the poor people of Amsterdam in the very late part of the war. And I can see the images now. And that's what she's great at creating, is great descriptive imagery. Operation Tulip by Deborah Swift. I was trying to, she just has a new book out, Last Train. I can't remember the title, but again, it's set in Poland. She's taking that series of war. And of course, she loves to write about women, as I do. And so the outfits, I mean, I can imagine everything they're wearing. I could practically direct the production if it became a production. To me, that's really good writing, if you like that kind of wartime episode. But also, you know, the Nazis were very male dominated, and she's giving voice to a female who's struggling. She's a British female who's been left in Amsterdam. So it's an intriguing story, and it goes between Amsterdam and England. So it's good for people who want to read about maybe a new place like Amsterdam if they've not been. She's got that down as well. Beautiful, beautiful descriptions of Amsterdam during Nazi occupation.
That sounds lovely. Great, isn't it, when you can read a book and feel like you've travelled to somewhere new?
Yeah. It's cheaper. It's much cheaper than getting an airline ticket. And you know, I've been to Amsterdam, but not to the part she's writing about. And I didn't know which parts were occupied by them and where the line was. She writes a lot about how people couldn't escape if they can get over the lines, you know. And get out. So it's intriguing. I've written about that period because that's the end of the Flying Scotsman, 1949. So I did know a lot of the, you know, I'm writing about the bombs in Hull, and then they were probably going over, you know, to Germany. And of course, for those listeners who don't know, the reason Hull was bombed nearly as much as London is because they weren't going to take the bombs back, were they? So drop them somewhere in Hull on the way back. And, you know, that's the point I make, how Hull has had to be rebuilt since the war, because they dropped them every night. And, you know, my grandfather was too old to be, but he was given an award because he was on the bomb team that basically put the fires out on an evening. So after he'd finished on the Flying Scotsman or whichever train he was driving into Hull, he would then go straight to the place, because they knew when it got dark, they would drop the bombs. So he got honoured for that as well. I mean, I call him a kamikaze pilot almost. You know, that he was not only putting his family at risk, but he felt he was doing his duty. And that comes over in Deborah's novel as well. That, you know, people who have that need during dreadful times to give back and do their duty. It's an amazing thing. We're both writing about it, but from different perspectives.
Incredible story.
Yeah, I mean, just they have to be put down, because otherwise, we, you know, after we're gone in this generation, people won't find these things out. I don't know, you know, I haven't gone back and looked at the whole paper, the whole Daily Mail, and how much was reported. I presume if I went into the archives, I'm very lucky as well. I have a great archivist in my friend Belinda Shonett. She worked for the Daily Mail for many, many years. And so she knows where every archive is. So she's done a lot of my archive, which again, historical writers really need about a team of 5 people to help them get everything accurate. And I pray nobody will read my book and then write to me and say, you got this wrong.
I feel like a lot of our listeners are going to be inspired to delve into their own family histories now and find these gems that they can write about. So thank
You
you.
must. Every family has a story. You know, if every picture tells a story, every family has a story, and it's just whether they've had that openness. I don't know if my next series, I'm going to start on the farmers of East Riding, because I still have farming cousins, and I don't think there's anybody who's told the farming story. I'm probably wrong, and somebody will quite happily get in touch with me and tell me you're wrong. But I find farming fascinating even today. Again, in the last 50, 70 years, it's changed amazingly, just like writing has, and readers and libraries. But I think, farmers are very funny people. And I know their stories have been told as biographies and things, but in a way, I'm a comedy writer too. I like to tell the funny side of people and their quirks, because that's what I believe makes them real, whether they're on stage in theatre or whether they're true stories. Everybody has a strange person in their family.
Yeah, at least one.
Yeah, that's
At least
normally
one
me.
that you can write about. Absolutely. I think we'll all agree they come to our mind, and I think that's why people like reading what I write, because I always ask if anybody says something great about my book, I say, which character did you like? And I know some of the characters that I love are stronger, but everybody has to be in the story when it's a family story. I don't have a lot. I try not to burden them with too much detail at the beginning, but there's always one character. Another bit of advice: whichever character is your strong one, let it have its voice, because there's always one that is stronger in each novel. Sometimes there's 2, but there's always one that your readers will, whether it's a baddie or a goodie, they will tell you which one they like when you meet your readers. That's why I'm doing the East Riding libraries, because I know they're going to tell me what they like. And when I meet the public, and that helps my next novel. Okay, if they love this character, I have to put this in it, in the next one.
Well, I hope the tour is brilliant. It sounds like it's going to be great. And we thank you very much for taking the time to speak to us today. It's been brilliant. It's been really inspiring chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mary, and thank you so much, both of you, for doing such a great job with podcasts. Believe it or not, you've got me into listening to podcasts.
Amazing.
More. If I can do one a day, I'm doing that, because again, it's all about learning, and we learn from each other. But thank you so much for giving me this opportunity.
Thank you so much. It's been absolutely brilliant speaking to you and hearing all your stories. So yeah, enjoy sunny England whilst you're here, and we'll catch up soon. Thanks for tuning into the Write Club. We hope you enjoyed this episode and feel inspired to keep writing. Don't forget to sign up for our newsletter at Writers Online, your go-to for writing tips, competitions, and exclusive updates. Plus, you'll never miss an episode of the Write Club. Until next time, happy writing.